Life Audio.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer. We'll start the conversation with Peggy and her guests next.
Once in a generation, a podcast comes along with the power and eloquence to inspire us all.
This show will entertain you while you wait for that one. Join two best friends, author and former history teacher John Driver and comedian Johnny W. for hilarious and authentic conversations about life, history, culture, faith, and everything in between.
You can listen to Talk About That wherever you find your podcasts or at lifeaudio.com.
The Historical Jesus Podcast is the sweeping saga of the life and times of Galilean Jesus of Nazareth, as well as the faith, religion, and church founded to honor and disseminate his acts and teachings. Join me, Mark Vinette, on this fascinating journey through time, exploring the many great works of Christian theology, literature, architecture, music, and art, inspired by the words and deeds of Jesus Christ.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com. Here's Peggy Ployer.
Today, we are going to talk about how to unlock your students' potential with AI. And this is part one of a two-part conversation that I'm going to be having with Hannah Williams. Welcome, Hannah, to the show. I'm going to quick read your bio, actually, so that everybody kind of knows a little bit about you. So Hannah is the founder of DeSkills, a VC-backed startup shifting students from test prep to life prep. It's the hub where motivated teens learn new digital skills, plus convert themselves into real-world projects, helping them leave high school with more experience, plus connections that most college graduates don't have. The vision is to equip 1 million high schoolers with impact portfolios, so they are set to forge their own paths in life. Hannah is also the author of a top-selling book, A Leader's Guide to Unlocking Gen Z, and a TEDx speaker, plus top 10% charting podcast host. Welcome to the show, Hannah. I'm super excited to be talking to you today about AI.
Thank you, Peggy. This is going to be such fun. And I say fun intentionally. I know this sort of topic can be kind of scary, but I'm so excited. And something that my bio didn't mention is I'm actually a homeschool graduate. I was homeschooled K through 12, so excited to delve into that as well.
Well, and I think that's really, it's important to know that, because the more homeschoolers, that you meet, and I homeschooled for 19 years and, continue to meet homeschoolers just being in the community. And a lot of homeschooled students really think outside the box. And that is not a bad thing.
It's a great thing.
It is. It's an awesome thing. And I really want you to talk about that a little bit and how parents can encourage that. But I'd love to first start out with your story and just how did you end up working with AI and what's the story behind that, and then continue to help other students in this realm?
Yeah. So I'm 25 now, just a few years past our, homeschool students. I'm actually the oldest of 7 kids. My youngest sister is 9, so my parents have a long homeschooling journey ahead. Oh my gosh, my mom jokes about having another kid, and I'm just sitting here going, "Mom, I'm old enough to have kids now, and my husband and I have been married for 5 years." And anyway, so I grew up in your very typical, amazing homeschool family. My parents are just phenomenal. My mom stayed at home and homeschooled us, and my dad was an entrepreneur, still is. I have a really distinct memory when I was 12. So my dad is a real estate entrepreneur, and he was just getting started when I was in middle school. So my parents decided I was going to go to work with him, a day or so a week. And I know many homeschool parents do this if their parents are entrepreneurs,
right.
As an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You just bring them with. My daughter traveled to so many conferences with me.
I love that. It's so important. And I guess my parents, wanted me and my siblings, but it really started with me to get involved in the family business and understand the behind the scenes. So I was your very, studious kid, always wanted to have the best grades and challenge myself. So one day I'm sitting in the back of my dad's blue Chevy pickup truck. We're bouncing down the highway, on the way to collect rents by hand, because that's what you did in whatever year that was. I was 12. So it's been quite a while. So we're bouncing down the road, it's his old Chevy pickup truck. So my homework's going everywhere. I'm trying to get my math assignment done. And out of the blue, he hands me his cell phone and he said, "Hey, Hannah, the phone's ringing. There's a guy at the end of the line who wants to sell his house and you're going to close the deal."
Ah.
I was freaked out. I was so scared. I looked at my dad with these wide eyes, and I just sort of whispered to him, "What do you think you're doing? You don't get that." He was just starting his business. You don't get that many leads, hot leads every week. It wasn't like these were coming in every single day. But I trusted him. I took this phone, and through fumbling through this conversation with my dad's help, we ended up closing a deal on a duplex. My parents still own it, so I can drive by this duplex and remember this. But what this did for me, Peggy, is I realized in that single moment, oh my gosh, all of these skills that my mom has been teaching me, that classes have been teaching me, whether it was communication, speech and debate, even learning how to critically think or how to navigate scenarios, that my skills were applicable in real life.
Yes.
And that was the thing I had not realized for my, of course, all of middle school. But as I got into high school and I started college early, so I ended up enrolling in online college when I was 14. I graduated with my bachelor's at the end of high school when I was 18. And what I realized is through those 4 years of test cramming, which is what doing online college early consisted of, test cramming, fact memorization, all of that, I realized at my first corporate job, when I looked back on my entire education, I looked back at my 12-year-old memory, at what I learned from different classes, I realized two things. Number one, most students never have the blue pickup truck experience that I had.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And secondly, most students don't even get an experience where they realize their skills are connected to the real world until after college. And now that we're living in a world where AI is changing every way we work, think, and play.
Right.
I've seen the other side. I've seen the companies who are hiring students. I've talked to the leaders who are telling me things like, we're not hiring someone who's not AI powered or who has real world relevant skills. And my heart just drops because I realize when I look back on my own story that most students, regardless of their background in education, are studying for tests and not prepping for life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's where the premise of DiSkills came from, is helping students build what now we're going to need in an AI-powered future, what real-world skills, mindsets, competencies, and characteristics students will actually need to thrive in careers or starting their own business, whatever comes after high school. It's awesome. It's amazing to see the stories, which I'll share in a little bit, of what students are able to achieve with that mindset.
That's awesome because, my daughter's in college right now, and, it's just they just keeps telling them over and over again, don't use AI, don't use AI, that's cheating. But I want to flip that script. And I know you do too, about how it's not cheating. After a word from our sponsor, we'll dive back into this conversation.
Hey everybody, I'm Dale.
And I'm Tamara.
And we're hosts of the Kainos Project podcast,
where we help you tackle ancient Christian truths in everyday settings.
The word kainos means new, and that's exactly what we want to do on our podcast. Bring something new from what is old in our faith.
And on this show, you might hear us explore topics like what the Bible has to say about student loan forgiveness, discuss how the Satanic Temple affects our view of religious liberty in America, or even question why is it that so many people are having rapture anxiety.
To learn more about the podcast, go to lifeaudio.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.
You're talking to a community who, is told a lot of times, well, it's cheating if you help your student, if you provide accommodations or modifications. So our community is a little different because we're already tweaking and changing things a lot. So maybe a little more open-minded about how AI may be helpful. So that's a plus, because I know when we first talked, you are like, are you willing? Because I know there's a lot of people that have very closed minds and are very scared about AI. Can we talk just a little bit about that first, where those fears come from, and maybe debunk some of them?
Absolutely. So I've worked with about 3,000-ish companies at this point, and of course, hundreds and hundreds of parents and students. And the common sort of sentiment I hear about AI is one of two things. And I hope that we're shifting this. And I love your community, Peggy, because the openness is so critical to have in this age right now. So the two mentalities that I hear are either, oh my gosh, I love this, it's changing my life. Mm-hmm. And you know what's interesting, and the reason I love that we're having this conversation, students who have dyslexia, ADHD, all of that are some of the fastest adopters of this tech. My sister is one of them. She's getting through college because of it. So we'll talk about that in a second. So that's one response. The other response is complete fear. Complete fear. And I totally get this. I mean, I think we've been influenced by media for a long time to sort of shape our perceptions of what artificial intelligence is. And we're taught to think of it, based on even something like Terminator, we're taught to think about AI as some form of actual intelligence instead of a computer algorithm.
Yes. Yeah.
And because of that, there's the temptation to, instead of viewing it as a tool, we've been hyped up for decades to think that as soon as we've got artificial intelligence, we've got something that's going to completely take over the world and turn into, something that kills humans. Like, there's so many misconceptions. Mm-hmm. Now, this is something that I find really, really a really helpful lens or way to think about this tech. So if as a parent or a leader or an educator, you can view what's happening right now with AI as similar to what happened with the calculator back in the 80s. So what happened then, and I was not alive then, so you could probably tell me better, Peggy. But there was a time when schools were banning calculators, right?
Oh, absolutely. I remember that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, AI is at a much larger level or a bigger, massive scale and scope. But if the same premise applies, we as humans have defined what is cheating or what we should be afraid of.
Very true. Yes.
If we instead had the lens, what level up could our students achieve with access to this tech? Mm-hmm. That's a much healthier way to view this. Now, is there still, the potential future where humans empowered with AI could do radical evil with it? Yeah, absolutely. Could they also do
anything.
radical good? Yes, they could.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I view this. I'm definitely not a pure optimist when it comes to AI. Instead, I think of it as yet another tool, just like the internet, just like calculators, just like even going way back to, the age before we had farming equipment. I'm sure there were people during that age who thought, well, you're cheating if you're using a tractor to plow your field, because you're getting rid of jobs. And I use this illustration all the time of, imagine you could go back to the pre-industrial revolution. You could go back to when people were planting seeds by hand. You got to know there was some person out there who bought a brand new tractor and used it to plow the way to where their workers were still sowing seeds by hand. Right. Yeah. That's all they used it for. So, and that's what the temptation can be as parents, as even educators, to sort of, handcuff kids from the future. And we're all about on this conversation talking about how to not do that.
Right. Absolutely. I love that analogy because, my kids, I remember when AI first came out, and my kids are now adults. So it was kind of in their teenage years that it was hitting, and they were like, it's going to steal jobs. And I'm like, but you got to think, jobs just change. And I had heard a couple of years ago that the thought is now that kids graduating in this age will change careers 7 times in their lifetime. And so they're going to be changing anyways. And how are we preparing our kids? Are we holding them back from what the change is, or are we moving with that change and equipping them for that change? And so that's really a great analogy that you brought up, because for sentimental reasons, we can want to go back and plant our seeds by hand. But for practical reasons, I have a brother-in-law who farms thousands of acres. He's not going to do it by hand and keep up with the day and age. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So that's a really good point. So we're going to get into some practical things, hopefully that can just enhance your school, but also enhance your teaching and enhance your home. Hannah has some great things to talk about. So what would you like to kick off first?
Gosh, okay, there's so much, and we're going to get practical, but I have to say this first of all. When we have this conversation about AI today, and I hope this comes through in my heart and how I talk about this, I hope that everyone listening is hearing this. So we're talking about AI not as just a tool. We're talking about AI as a future changing movement. So what I mean by that is we're about to go into some really practical things to make GPT, which is an AI tool, really accessible, so you can get excited about using it or help your kids if they've got learning differences. Right. And at the same time, what I hope is very clearly underscored is what I'm passionate about here at DeSkills and the work we're doing with kids and the empowerment we're able to give them is asking the question, what skills and mindsets do our students need to have to thrive and make a difference and be impactful leaders in a world where AI powers the future? It's not just going to require technical skills, like technical competencies around AI. That's a good place to start with getting your kids interested in learning this tech. But the bigger question, to your point, Peggy, if kids are going to have 7 to 10 careers, not jobs, careers in our lifetime, then what competencies come from that? Change management, the ability to adapt, tenacity, resilience, communication, collaboration, the things that make us uniquely human. That's what I'm all about, is the skills, not just technical skills. So I wanted to make sure that was clear.
And we're going to focus our second hour more on that end of the conversation. And so this first part is going to be a lot more practical, just about unlocking your students' potential. And so we're going to talk about just how you can use it to set up your school. If your student has specific learning challenges, how can AI help with that? How can it help you be a better teacher, help them be a better student? So we're going to focus all on that. So part 2, we'll focus more on the future ready. And so that's why we're doing a 2-parts conversation, because there's just way too much content and we don't want to cut anything out that you really want to hear about. So, or we really want to tell you about, because you don't even know you need to know it.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So let's get really practical with some things here. I know that we had a question come in about dyslexia, and I don't know, do you want to go into that now?
Valerie asked, she said, how can I use AI to support my student who has dyslexia? And just know too, if you're watching live, we have live viewers on right now. If you have a question, how do I help with this? Put it in the feed right now, because we want to address that as well.
Awesome. So I'll share my screen in just a minute with an actual AI tool on it, so you guys can see how this plays out. But first of all, with this question, Valerie, which is a great question about dyslexia. So I'll share just a quick story, and then I'll show you a couple of things. So my sister, who's just a few years younger than me, is in nursing school right now. She has severe dyslexia. I mean, she is it's hard for her to even get the first words down on a page when she's writing an essay, right? And that prevented her from completing college the first time she went. So she tried when she was 18 or 19. It was just way too much. She's brilliant, but she couldn't get the first words down on paper. And as we all know, essays are how most high school and most of college evaluates work, which we could have I could get on my soapbox about how that's no longer relevant, but let's just assume for the sake of things that that's going to be the case for a while. So my sister called me a couple of weeks ago. She's back in nursing school. She's 23 now. She called me so excited. She said, Hannah, you won't believe this. I love writing essays now. And she was just pouring with excitement. And she said, Hannah, before ChatGPT, I mean, you know how hard it was. Like, you tutored me, you know how hard it was for me to do anything. It ended up in tears and, crying and banging my head against a wall for so long in high school. And now that I have ChatGPT, I use it to get my brain thinking about ideas and an outline for my essay. And by the time it helps me brainstorm an outline, I'm able to give it, tweaks and have a conversation with it. And suddenly it helps me come up with the first sentence, and it gets me started writing. And an hour later, I've got an essay that I'm really proud of. And then I let it go back through and edit it for me. So notice a couple things from this story. There's a couple things Sam is not doing. First thing she's not doing is having AI write the entire paper for her.
Right.
This is a really big challenge that so many schools and parents I talk to this is where some of the fear comes from.
Right, exactly.
What if AI just completely takes over the work that my student is assigned to do and they just don't care? Yeah. What we find is that the opposite actually happens. If a student writes an essay and they let ChatGPT or Bard or whatever AI tool they're using do all the work for them, then they're not actually understanding the concepts. So if you as a teacher, an educator, take it a few steps further and ask your student to describe what they wrote about, you're going to quickly see if they actually used AI as a tool or if they used it as a crutch.
Right.
So for Sam, you notice one thing, she did not use it to write her entire paper. But the second thing is the really positive side. She used it to overcome hours of struggle for something so simple. And what she was able to do is turn what was an exhausting exercise into something she loved. And now she finds learning is fun. She's scoring at the top of her classes now. She's able to use GPT to create songs to memorize concepts that she needs for her anatomy and physiology. She's using it to write poems. She's using it to just have fun with learning. So if you've got a student with dyslexia or any similar type of learning difference, oh my gosh. Again, this is why I said students who have these learning differences are some of the biggest adopters of this tech because it makes life so much simpler. Okay, so that's the theoretical. Why don't I share my screen and show you all how this works? All right, let me know when you can see it.
Yep, it's up there right now.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things. And I guess first question, because I speak to all different types of audiences. One of the main questions I get before even starting is, how do I even create a GPT account? Like, how do I get here?
Yes, I'm already there. So
Sweet. So you can see just the URL up in my browser. This is a free tool. Now, I'm going to switch to the free version. I have the paid version. It's $20 a month. I would pay $1,000 a month for this tool at this point, but maybe that's just me. So I'm going to go to the free version just so you all can see exactly what I'm able to do without paying for anything. So let's take this dyslexia example here for just a second, because I think it's a really powerful way to describe what you can do.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Let's take my sister, Sam, right? And let's say that she needed to write an essay on The Great Gatsby. Say that was an assignment. Or you know what, Peggy, why don't you pick a book? What's a book that you might write an essay on, or kids might?
Oh, goodness. Anne of Green Gables.
Anne of Green Gables. Okay.
Yep.
So here is what I'll just show you a contrast. Here is the reason that using AI technology actually takes some critical thinking from your student. It's not just going to give them all the answers, right?
Yes.
So if I said, write me an essay on Anne of Green Gables, let's just pretend that I'm, you're a middle school student and whatever. Okay. So if I said, write me an essay on Anne of Green Gables, it's going to give me really terrible writing because I haven't actually prompted it, right?
Right.
I mean, just look at this. It's like, this is written by GPT. If your 8th grader came to you and said, I wrote this essay, you'd be like, yeah, no, you didn't. It's very obvious. Okay, so it says, at the heart of Anne of Green Gables are its memorable characters, each contributing to the richness of the story. So it's so generic. It's like a Wikipedia article, right? Yeah. But you saw how fast it did that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to open a new chat, and I'm going to show you what the process of writing an essay could look like if your student has understood how to prompt GPT effectively, right? So you'll see here, it takes critical thinking. It takes a good understanding of English and grammar to get what you want to out of this tool. Yeah. So let's say this instead. I am in 9th grade and writing an essay about Anne of Green Gables. And I'll put just the first book. All right. And then I'll say, you are a creative writing assistant. So I'm conditioning it to tell me.
Right, exactly. You tell what it's the job that it's supposed to do. Yeah.
Exactly. You're a creative writing assistant. I will write the essay. Your job is to give me creative suggestions and edit my work. Okay. So then I'm going to come down here and say, first, you will provide 10 suggested themes or topics we could write about. Second, you'll provide an outline of our essay with an introduction, 3 middle paragraphs, and a conclusion. All right, you can make this prompt as thorough as you want it to be or as unthorough, as you saw with my first one.
Yes,
and then
unthorough
thirdly,
gets nothing that you really want. You're just going,
exactly.
no, not exactly what I was thinking.
Exactly. All right. So then I told it'll write, a first rough draft. So it's going to, as an AI, because remember, it's my creative assistant here, it's going to give me suggested themes first. Now, because of the way I prompted it, it went ahead and gave me an outline, which is probably not great. I would have liked it to stop here and ask me, which theme do you want to use?
Theme. Right.
Now you can go back up here, because if I made that mistake and I didn't want that, I could go back here, get rid of it, and then submit it again. And then I'll add that in the future. Okay, so let's walk through this. So Peggy, do any of these topics stand out to you?
It's kind of hard for me to read.
Oh, no. Let me see if I can zoom in as well.
No, that's okay. The power of imagination. I like that.
Love
one.
it.
Yes.
I love
that. Was actually the topic I was thinking of when I thought of Anna Green Gables, is that just how, yes, she's just so flamboyantly creative.
Yes. I love her character too. Okay, so let's tell GPT. I love topic number 1. Now please write let's see, we'll just tell it to write an outline with an introduction, 3 paragraphs, and a conclusion. Okay, so now it's going to take our topic and give us an introduction plus the 3 paragraphs. You can look at these topics, it gives you a hook, the genesis of Anne's imagination as a catalyst for growth, and then a conclusion. Now we can decide, do we like this or do we want it to rewrite? So I could say, please, I like the outline. Please give me a different option for paragraph 3. And then it will give me a different one. Okay, so now, just to rush through this a bit, but you could say as a student, great, now please write our intro paragraph. So you're guiding it through, as you can see, through the process here of writing something. You ultimately have to be the final say on this, right? You have to be the one to say, do I want it to have this tone? In the world of Anne Shirley, the ordinary is never quite what it seems. This is good, but
it's
is it
good, but
writing?
It may not be your voice. And so the student would have to change it to their voice in order to make it, theirs.
So then the student, if they're really being creative, and this is how you as a teacher, as a parent, your writing style or your instruction style can shift based on what you want your student's outcome to be. So you might have them creatively figure out a way to make sure that ChatGPT outputs writing in the student's voice. So one thing they might learn is how to take paragraphs of writing that they've done, copy it here into GPT, and get the GPT to match up with their writing style.
Okay.
So there's so many different things you could do, right? So if we like the intro, and we won't finish this whole essay, but you could say, okay, now write paragraph 2, then 3, then, go back and edit the whole thing. So that's just one example. If you're a student with dyslexia, for example, and you get this assignment, imagine how many opportunities this unlocks for you to actually use those creative parts of your brain that might think of ideas that ChatGPT hasn't. If you were to come down here and say, I love this paragraph, but I'd like to focus more on Anne's response to Gilbert Blythe when he, pick a scene, when he, slams what does he do? It's not a rock. It's been so long.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember either.
Maybe the first day of school or something.
Oh, yeah.
And his response to her or something like that. And you could have it rewrite that section about the encounter with Gilbert Blythe. So this is just, I'll come back to the stream here. So this is just a great example, or pretty simple example of how AI as a writing assistant, when a student's given this power, you have the chance for a student to, number one, realize that in their future job, if they're asked to write a proposal or a memo or whatever it is, they're not going to be doing it the way that current English classes teach. They're going to be using AI. So why not start them now, right? Imagine that student, your student who's learning how to write essays. You can think about it from the context of what are they going to have to write in the future? You know, if they're writing creative blog posts, how can they leverage AI to help them do that? Because I found, as someone who writes very regularly for my business in very creative, sometimes humorous, sometimes visual ways, that sometimes GPT simply can't, you know, give me the quality of writing I want. And then I have to use my critical thinking to get to coach it. So how much more students in high school or middle school right now learning how to write with this tool are going to be set up for success?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different way of approaching that creativity, but yet it's outputting something that is like compounded of what you could actually do in that amount of time. I found the same thing. I had to write a new intro script for, because we're rebranding this podcast. And, you know, I put in what I needed and then tweaked and changed it. And I sent it off to Salem Media and they're like, this is amazing. And I was like, yep. And I never could have wrote it on my own. It would have ended up being so dry. But yes, and that's how you leverage all of that power. This is really an executive functioning help as well, not just for somebody that has dyslexia, but organizational skills. What other ways could parents who have kids with like executive function, or maybe this is a question we get often too, is I as a parent can't stay organized. Is there a way that GPT and AI could help with that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. There are so many things we could go into of how, like, I've used GPT personally to organize my life, but let me just expand your view for just a second.
Yep.
So there are hundreds of AI tools out there. The reason that I'm using GPT right now is because it, in my opinion, is the best interface for this sort of chat function that we're going through right now.
Yep.
You know, if you want to write something, or even it can help you with math homework. It literally can do math. It can create graphics. If you have the paid version, I'll show you in a second. It can create images for you. I actually have what's called a GPT. You can see on the left over here, there's Tara, Nolan, Lily. These are called GPTs, and you can customize your GPT. And that's like level 2 masterclass. But basically the idea here is I created a GPT called Dan, the homeschool hype man. And he takes funny scenarios from your day of homeschooling and creates a funny image of what your day's like. So it can create images from a few words, which is so cool. The reason I bring this up is this tool is the basis. It's kind of, they were the first company to create artificial intelligence. But since then, so many other tools have integrated AI into their tool to make their tool much more easy to use.
Yes.
So if I were in the shoes of a parent, and maybe we can go through some very particular situations, Peggy, but if you're thinking about organization, my approach, or my suggested approach, would be use tools that have AI power, but aren't actually GPT, because with GPT, what we're doing right now will need to be like, you might have to build something to make something automated. So you might want to use tools like Motion, or there's so many task organizer list tools that now have AI power in them to read your calendar and then give you opportunities to sync. So maybe can you actually just walk me through a couple of scenarios that that might come up, and we can talk about the best tools?
Sure. Should I remove your screen?
Yeah, go for it. And then we'll come back in a second.
All right. I think a lot of times parents have difficulty in just figuring out an overall lesson plan for the year. You know, how do I plan it? And then what does that look like day to day? And how could I actually get to my end goal by the time that we're done with the year, and so for those that, especially the executive functioning and what should my day look like, a lot of times they'll turn to a box curriculum, but unfortunately in our community, that's not possible because your child's doing like 7th grade math and they're doing 2nd grade reading. And so they've got all these different components coming in, and yet it's all chaotic. How do you make, some kind of sense out of that?
Awesome. Okay, let's take that example. And actually, if you'll pull up my GPT screen again,
Yep.
Let's walk through it. Okay. So let's take that exact example, and I'll ask you to give me some parameters, and we'll walk through it. So the best way to think about GPT is as an assistant to anything in your life, that if you could call up a friend and the friend had perfect, full comprehensive knowledge of exactly what you should do, and you got to talk to that friend for as long as you wanted, and they gave you all their executive knowledge, that's ChatGPT. So instead of having to parse through, Google and read everyone's articles and blogs and all of that about a particular topic, you can customize your whole plan right in here. Now, I'll make a quick disclaimer. So on the free version of GPT, which is what we're using right now, you can't search the web, or it can't search the web. So it only has access to data up to like September of 2023. Now, if you pay for the paid version, there's some really cool things you can do, which might help in this scenario. So here's one thing you can do. You can upload files. So let's say that you had one of those in the box curriculums that you were using. You could actually upload the PDF of that curriculum and then ask it to customize a lesson plan based on specific changes that your child needs.
Okay.
So that's one thing to know. The second is, this is where image generation happens and where web searching happens. So just as a quick example, before we get into our official example here, if I just said, search the web for ideas on how to help my child with ADHD focus. I don't know. Let's just say that's the web search.
That's a big one.
Awesome. So you'll see here, and this is the part that with streaming, it sometimes has trouble doing, but you'll see here it thought for a second, and it was actually searching the web on the back end before it started giving us results. It also will give us references of where it found the information, etc. Okay, so let's go back. I'll use the paid version for this example since we may want to, search the web, upload things. So let's go through your example of, let's say we're building a lesson plan. So give me a couple of pieces of info. So let's say I'm a homeschooling parent building a lesson plan. We'll do it like Mad Libs for my what grade student?
How about 4th grade?
All right. For my 4th grade student, he has what learning differences do we want to put in here?
Let's put ADHD and autism.
All right. Perfect. Let's now say my goal is to build a comprehensive what subject?
Let's do math.
Math lesson plan for the spring semester. It should be, let's just say you've got a 15 weeks in your spring semester. You do it a little bit differently from typical school. It should be 15 weeks long and take approximately, how long do you want it to take him each day?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes per day. Awesome. Okay, so you can see here that I am, I'm giving it parameters. I'm telling it very specific ideas of what I want it to be like. Now let's do something that we didn't do in our essay example. Let's have it pull from other references of curriculum that we've liked. So what have been some curriculums that we think it should sort of inspire the lesson plan based on?
Let's go with Demi Learning and Unlock Math.
Okay. Unlock Math in the past. what are some of the challenges that this year you might be facing and not wanting to use either of these programs?
Let's say more hands-on, but less teacher intensive.
Okay. Less teacher intensive. And then let's say you will build a learning plan where you coach my student into learning math appropriate, for him while lessening the burden on me. Okay, so let's just see what it gives us. We may need to go back and edit this and see, it may need to ask us questions. One of my favorite prompt pieces to add is ask me questions before beginning. Because then it will give me a list of questions that clarify.
That's great. Yes. That you didn't even think of sharing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So let's see what it did first, and we may want to go back and add that, So, okay, creating a comprehensive hands-on lesson plan sounds like a rewarding challenge. Cool. Okay. The lesson plan is structured around weekly themes. So it has weeks 1 through 3, numbers and operations. Here's activities. Okay. Activities it could do.
That's really cool.
Here's geometry. A shape hunt. I mean, I've never thought about some of these things.
Right.
before.
I know. I saw the using the app for what was it? A grocery store spree, a shopping spree or whatever.
Ooh.
Yes. That was really cool. Yeah.
That's really cool. You could get like your Monopoly money and simulate shopping and set that up. Board game day math. Okay. So then you've got geometry, tangram challenges through an app. I'm sure there's
Legos.
plenty of apps.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's given us all of these suggested things. So now what we could do is say, I love these. You could then go ahead and build out this plan. You could say, start with week 1, give me specific instructions that are understandable to my student of how to maybe execute these activities, or however you want to phrase this, let's just have it give us some instructions that you could then hand to your son and say, hey, here's what you're going to do.
Right,
here's the materials you need.
Great.
Here's
I love
instructions.
Your objective. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what you're going to learn. And then repeat, has it do it 5 times. So this is endlessly customizable. I hope that's what's translating, because I could come in here if we wanted to spend all day on this, we could. I could say, now for each of these exercises, give my student a question to ask and answer before they come to me with what they learned. I could say, so give me a reflection question. I could say, I've read through these, they look great, but my student doesn't like puzzles. Give me an alternate option for the puzzle challenge. So there's so many ways to customize this, but as you can see, we've got instructions here in a matter of seconds for 5 games. Since we're using the online version or the paid version, if it said, on day 5, find online math games, I could ask it, take me to, or I guess here it did suggest some options, but let's say it didn't.
Right.
I could say, give me a list of 5 websites to choose from.
Right.
So I hope you can see here, this is endlessly customizable for, and if I were a parent, oh my gosh, just that one exercise we went through in 5 minutes might save me hours, days of planning?
I used to take, weeks in the summer to just even get the rough draft of the outline, let alone, something this detailed. So yes, it would save a lot of time. And also you could customize it too, versus, you have to think of the precursor to, I had already owned then all that curriculum. where we could go back to not even having to search for that and then go through all the stuff that I had. So, and spend money that, you didn't even need to spend in the first place. So saving a lot of time. So I could see where the $20 a month could really pay off in the long run, for doing something and having that searchability.
I'd even go so far as to say that thinking, of course, about your fourth, your fifth, your sixth graders, but going into high school, college readiness, all of these things, that $20 a month subscription is almost replaceable of a private tutor. Like you could almost take a private tutor who would have been teaching AP English or AP US history. If you prompted this correctly, you as a parent could set up the same amount of challenging exercises, whatever, using this assistant with unlimited chats, unlimited, like these GPTs, which again, we could get into in a later session. Right. You could get into building out an AP US history tutor that's trained on all the AP requirements. There's so many customizable options here. And if for a very savvy parent, you could probably replace 90% of all the other, money, whatever you're spending on curriculum just with this tool.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So we've got about 10 minutes left of this hour. Now, just know that we have a whole nother hour, but that's not going to be live. It's going to be recorded. So you'll have to watch it later. And so keep you hanging. I've got one question that just came in. She said, I came in late. What is AI? I have 3 kids and it is still $20 a month? So good question. I'll let you that, Hannah.
So quick recap. So first of all, earlier in the session today, we were looking at the free version of ChatGPT, and we were writing essays with the free version. So if you're someone who's like, I can't make the $20 a month happen, then you can use the free version and get a lot of cool things out of it. But in terms of your question about AI, so at its most basic definition, AI is it's artificial intelligence. It's basically a tool that you can chat with that can help you with every area of your homeschooling, of even meal planning. We haven't even gone into that.
That's what I want you to end with. I want you to end with that. So
okay,
yes, yay. We'll definitely.
But it can help you with everything, with organization, with privately tutoring your kids, whatever it is. And we were talking earlier about how AI and the fact that it's here now is changing every way that we work, think, and play, and that students using this technology are going to be ready for their futures, whether it's college, jobs, internships. It's so incredibly fun to get your hands on this tool. So whoever was asking that question, if you go back and watch sort of the beginning, there's some cool examples of how to use it.
Yeah. And also to answer, Lisa, you had the question about cheating. We did address that earlier in the show, too. So I suggest that you just watch the beginning of our conversation so you can kind of get that perspective as well. So, so she asked $20 a month. That's a family account, I'm assuming, and it can be set up like that.
You can all use the same login. Yep. It's pretty cool. They don't have like limits on the login ability yet, unlike Netflix, which totally does. Exactly. But it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So let's talk meal planning. How does that happen with AI?
Oh my gosh. So this is so cool. And we could spend hours on here, Peggy, talking about all of the different ways you could use AI. I'm sure there's hundreds of ways. I haven't even unlocked it. And I have used this tool now since it came out in November of 2022. I have used this tool approximately 4 to 6 hours per day. Wow. That is how useful this is. So on my team, there's 6 employees. We work with hundreds of students, as we're going to get to in our next hour, helping them learn the skills they'll need to be prepared for the future. And I should have at this point a team of 15, 20, or 30 people. Instead, we have AI agents That's how powerful this technology is. We're replacing employees in a good way, in an efficient way that helps students to scale and to unlock their potential. So anyway, there's so many things you can do.
I want to plug your website too before you move on. It's dskills.io if you're listening to the podcast, and that'll be in the show description as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. We're there at DeSkills. So let's go to meal planning, because this technology, when it first came out, it was just the free version that we were using to write the Anne of Green Gables essay. But now that we have the paid version, this is why I literally would pay $1,000 a month for this tech at this point. With the paid version now, we have the ability to create images and to upload images. It will read them and then help us figure out, information from those images. So let's imagine you're doing your weekly meal planning. Now, I have a set of dietary restrictions and I have PCOS, and I try to follow like certain diet plans throughout each week of certain foods that I'm trying to focus on. So we could get really complicated with this. I'm going to show you the really simple version that you can use. And then there's level 2, which is if you take all your dietary restrictions into consideration, you could, build a GPT that does this for you in literal seconds each week. So let's say that you are wanting to just build a meal plan for your week. What we're going to do is actually upload images. I took some images of what's in my fridge before coming on the session. So I'm going to upload images of what's in my fridge for GPT to read. And while it's loading those, I'm going to say, please give me a 7-day meal plan based on what's in my fridge. Focus on, let's just give it some criteria. So Peggy, when you're planning your meals, what criteria might you give it?
That there's 3 adults eating dinner. Everybody eats breakfast on their own. Needs to be vegan, gluten-free.
Awesome. Okay, so 3 adults eating dinner. We have 3. Is it 3 kids? At
just
home?
2.
2. Okay. 2 kids who eat breakfast in the mornings with us as well. Let's just say, needs to be vegan and gluten-free, although I don't think that'll match what's in my fridge. We'll pretend it's gluten-free bread. We'll just stick with vegan here so it doesn't get confused.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So needs to be vegan. Please give me ideas for 2 dinners that can be, or maybe let's say 2 lunches that can be made in the crock pot, so we can have like leftovers, and make 1 dinner international themed. All right. So as you can see, with all of our other examples here, you can customize this as much as you want. You could spend, 10 minutes here making sure it knows, stay away from these foods, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're going to do, and again, this with the images and stuff, because we're streaming, it's going to be a little slower, but watch it read what's in our photos. And then it's going to give us suggestions based on a combination of what we asked for and what's in our fridge. So you'll see here, even if it didn't have the images, it's just giving us ideas here, right? Breakfast burritos, leftover vegan chili, vegan tacos. Here's our international themed one. Okay, so here's just basic ideas. I'm just going to pause this so you guys can see it was reading the images. So give me a list of all the items in my fridge / pantry. Whoops, panty. It'll get the gist here. So it's going to read what's in the images. Now, what I could do at this point is say, now, I like this meal plan. Go ahead and give me a shopping list for everything I need, right? There's actually a plugin here where you could plug in like Instacart for like connect it to your favorite grocery stores, and it'll automatically send it over to Instacart and place your order. So But just for the sake of this section, look and see as it's literally listing what it saw in my fridge. And this is very accurate. There's a couple of things that are off here, but I mean, it caught that I had sweet potatoes, coleslaw mix right there. It caught that I've got, sauces. So it's literally catching everything, including some brand names.
Wow.
So if you were, I showed my mom this at one point, and she's been able to reduce her amount of meal prep time for a family of 9, like insanely through each week, because all she has to do, snap pictures of what's in her fridge. There's a mobile app, so you could take the pictures on your phone, upload them directly to the app.
Right. So you wouldn't even have to upload them.
Exactly.
Take that extra step.
You could do it on your phone, say, hey, what's in my fridge? It'll read all the items. And then even if you were not planning for the entire week, even if you were just planning for a last minute dinner based on what's in your fridge, you could say, please give me last minute dinner ideas based on what's in my fridge. So if you wanted, I'm just going to pause it. So just based on the pictures that I took, you could have it just give you last minute meal ideas. So again, this is endlessly customizable of what it has the capability to do.
Wow. And it doesn't even just give you the vegan tacos. It tells you exactly how to use what's in your fridge to make those tacos.
Exactly. Yeah. It's telling me, okay, you got greens, tomatoes, coleslaw mix. You could use that to make this. So, and if you don't like the options, say, give me 10 more. And it's literally I've never had, it doesn't just give up and say, well, no, you're finished. That was too many ideas. It'll keep pulling new ones and giving you new ideas, new themes. So that, and take that, of course, and extrapolate it to all the other areas we haven't even talked about, whether it's personalized tutoring, image generation of your kids doing creative projects, or maybe they need images for a flyer for a church potluck, or you could literally generate all of that inside of this tool.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, our first hour is wrapping up. I want you to definitely plug your website, talk a little bit about what you do and the services you offer homeschoolers. And just know we're going to continue this for another hour. It'll come out on Thursday on YouTube. The podcast will come out a couple days after this podcast comes out, which is in a couple weeks. So anyways, but just know that Hannah has so much more to share, and we definitely wanted to highlight that. But we're going to talk about building future skills is the next conversation we're going to have too. But talk about the skills and just what you guys do, and how people can find you.
Yeah. So I mentioned, for those of you who joined late, that I'm 25, just a few years older than many of our students. DiSkills is a hub where your students could come to build these real world skills they're going to need for their futures. So at its core, our core engine is a 10-week gamified sprint where students leave with 3 things. They can go from 0 technical skills or even confidence in themselves to 10 weeks later, leaving with 3 things. Number 1, 50 LinkedIn connections. So students actually connecting with professionals, building their network early. Number 2, a paid impact project. So we essentially, through the 10-week sprint, students level up on these digital and AI skills we've been talking about, and they convert them into real world impact projects that help small businesses in their community. We show them how to find those businesses, whether it's local or online, and then do a project helping that business with their digital competencies. And thirdly, they leave with all of the skills they need to continue landing more paid projects and building confidence, tenacity, all the amazing things that we've discussed today. Because again, this is not just about the technical skills. In fact, it's so much less about the technical skills than helping prepare our kids for a future where AI powers the world. We have many, many homeschoolers who've gone through these boot camps. We have a couple right now who are just doing amazing. I could actually send you, Peggy, a link to one of them who's doing a phenomenal job on LinkedIn, building her own small business. And anyway, it's just so inspiring to be able to be.
Definitely have to talk to them about that next hour. Yes.
Yeah, we will.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah. And you can find us at deskills.io.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. This was just so insightful and I think empowering. That's what we really want to do, is just empower parents to do what they're called to do and teach their kids. And a lot of times we just run out of time, but having tech that can ease up some of that. And so thank you for all that you shared. This was amazing. And thank you all who joined us live. We'll be back again. For the next video that you'll see on the next podcast, I'll be talking with Hannah more about just AI, but we're gonna hit the other side and making kids future ready. And what tech talent needs to be there. But then next week at this time, we're going to talk about how do you practice what you preach and model biblical truth at home. And so that's the two topics coming up. So I hope you join us live here again, and just join our mailing list as well, because you can actually submit questions ahead of time, just like Valerie did for this show, so that you can ask the experts we have on the show how to help you do the things we're talking about, and maybe solve some problems that you're currently facing with your teaching at home. So anyways, thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you for tuning into Empowering Homeschool Conversations, and we'll see you next time, same place. Until then, God bless and have a great week. Bye, everybody. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hey there, it's Nicole Eunice from the How to Study the Bible podcast, and I'd love to invite you to join us as we weekly discover a passage of God's Word together. From beginning to end, from principles to practicals, we are here to make sure that God's Word is powerful and relevant to your life. If that sounds like something you're looking for, I would love to invite you to subscribe. You can go to lifeaudio.com and search How to Study the Bible, and we'll see you there.